Welcome to the kitchen. Today we're going to make gluten-free gingerbread. I'm in the middle of making a whole bunch of gingerbread for the holidays, and we're going to pass them out on the last day of school before vacation. So we have to make about 150 to 200 depending on how many people sneak them before the holiday. And I realized, you know what, we should really be doing a gluten-free one for any of our students who are gluten intolerant. And so I wanted to work on this recipe together with you. So gluten-free gingerbread. I'm going to be using Bob's Red Mill gluten-free measure-to-measure flour. Now, the purpose of using the measure-to-measure flour is that you're supposed to be able to substitute this for equal parts. So if I have a recipe that says 1 pound of all-purpose flour, you should be able to substitute this exactly the same amount. So 1 pound of the 1-to-1 baking flour, and it will be gluten-free. However, I have found over the years that sometimes that tends to not always be the solution. So for instance, when I'm making a muffin recipe, I've found that some of my muffins are falling apart. The reason why gluten-free flour doesn't hold together is that because gluten is the protein in flour that holds things together. So all-purpose flour, wheat flour, has a protein called gluten. That is what holds it together. So if you are using the gluten-free flours, which are made from rice, sorghum, and a variety of oat and different flours, they lack the gluten. So instead, they'll put in different products to help it. And one of those things is Xanthan Gum. Xanthan Gum is actually a plant product, and it binds the things together similarly the way gluten does. So I have found over the years that if I simply add a little bit extra of Xanthan Gum to my recipes when I'm using the Bob's Red Mill flour, it works. So I'm going to be using the measure-for-measure flour and adding a ½ teaspoon of the Xanthan Gum to the recipe, and that will keep it holding together and acting similarly to regular all-purpose flour that is made with wheat. Okay, so here are the rest of our ingredients. We need molasses, vanilla, cinnamon, baking soda, salt, baking powder, ginger, of course, lots of it, allspice, ground cloves, butter, dark brown sugar, and eggs. So let me get everything mise en place, and I'll show you how to make our gluten-free gingerbread men. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can bring you more recipes. Thank you. Here we have all of our mise en place. Everything's been measured out. Our butter is soft and it's in the mixer, and we're going to turn this on low speed. As soon as your butter's softened, we're just going to scrape it off the paddle and scrape down the sides of the bowl. We're going to add in our dark brown sugar. And again, on low speed, we're going to mix all of that until it's completely combined. While that's mixing, we're going to combine all of our dry ingredients. So here is our measure-for-measure gluten-free flour. This is the Xanthan Gum. Add that. Then our salt, baking soda, baking powder, and our seasonings. 1 tablespoon of ground ginger, 1 tablespoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of allspice, and a ½ teaspoon of ground cloves. We're just going to mix all of that together. Most important thing when you're making the cookie dough, you've got to keep scraping down the sides of the bowl and the paddle to get the food off of it so that it can mix in. Once you see that the butter is completely incorporated in with the sugar, you can add the eggs one at a time. So just gently pour it in. And if you get more than one, don't worry, but aim to get 1 in there. And again, mix it in slowly. I've allowed this to mix in long enough so that all of the egg has been incorporated and also looks a little bit light and fluffy. So now we're going to add in our vanilla, 2 teaspoons, and mix all of that in. Next will be our molasses, and then finally all of our gluten-free flour. All right, now I'm going to add in our molasses, and I sprayed the measuring cup with nonstick cooking spray. So you see how quickly it's coming right out of the measuring cup? That's because I sprayed it with nonstick cooking spray. All right, now that we've got everything mixed in, scrape down the paddles, scrape down the sides, and we are gonna add in all of our dry ingredients. And we're gonna add it in all at once and then stir it on low speed or even pulsing. I turn it on and off so that way it doesn't go all over the counter. All right, as your flour has been mixing in, do stop, scrape down the sides of the bowl, the paddle, and put it back on. If you notice that your dough is not coming together, and it could be because if you're in a very dry place or maybe your eggs weren't as large, you can always add a tablespoon of warm water at the end so that it can help come together. So I'm gonna keep this mixing, and we wanna look for it to pull back from the sides of the bowl and mix in. So you can see it's coming together. And I'm just gonna add a drop of water anyhow, just to help this. There we go. And then we're gonna let this chill in the refrigerator for 1 hour. All right, so this is our finished dough, and then we're gonna put it into 3 packets of saran wrap, and I like to put the saran wrap on and flatten it out and make it sort of like a disc or even a rectangle, and then put it in the refrigerator. Here we go, this is our gluten-free gingerbread. This was resting in the refrigerator overnight, and now we're gonna start to roll it and cut out our shapes. So we're gonna use our gluten-free flour, a light dusting on a piece of parchment paper. I prefer to use parchment paper, it really, really helps. But if you don't, you can do it right on your counter and just dust it. And we wanna keep adding the gluten-free flour to a minimum. So that's why I'm using parchment paper, it really helps. So we're gonna roll this out. I prefer to roll it in this fashion with my hands on top of the rolling pin, and I rotate it. I go back and forth several times, then I turn the dough. Keep doing this, and we want to get it to about a 1/4 inch thick, or even an 1/8 inch. If you like really crisp gingerbread, make it an 1/8 inch thick. When you're making a gingerbread house, your pieces need to be thick in order to stand up, so those pieces will be a hair bigger than a 1/4 inch thick. So as you can see, I keep rotating it, and then every so often you're gonna turn the dough over and work on the other side, and continue going back and forth. If you find that it's sticking to the paper, you can turn it. I use 2 pieces, flipping it over, and that way I don't have to keep adding the flour. And we keep doing this until it's nice and thin. This is the thickness that I'm looking for right here, okay? So another reason why you don't want to keep adding flour is because it does leave a residue on top of the dough, which when you bake it still doesn't disappear. So try not to use a lot of that flour because otherwise it will be visible on your cookie. Now, it takes a while to roll out your cookie dough, so when you're cutting your cookies, always cut them like this is a jigsaw puzzle. You're trying to get that close as you can to the ones you just cut and use up all of the dough. And I usually do 2 different shapes, so that way, for all those little spots that this doesn't fit, we can use this cookie cutter to make sure that we're using up all the dough. So, like this. And then when you put them on your baking sheet, if they're stuck to the parchment paper, just use your offset spatula, go underneath to release it, and then pick it up. And be careful, they are fragile, they will break, and that is very annoying. So make sure you take the time to release them off the parchment paper, remove the scraps, and pick them up gently. Now, all your scraps can be saved. You can re-roll it, so that can be re-rolled. So make sure after you've cut everything out, you're just gonna squish it all together, but it has to rest in the refrigerator. So once you do roll it out and put it back in the refrigerator, let it rest for a minimum of an hour. Here are our gluten-free gingerbread men, and unfortunately I got distracted and forgot to rotate the sheet pan. So this is what happens in the oven here. When I do not rotate the sheet pan, it is unevenly baking, and as you can see, the edges on the ones at this end burnt, and this end is beautiful. So this is why it is important to rotate your baking trays while you are baking. So I'm gonna get another batch in the oven and bake those. I'm baking it at 300 degrees. It was about 12 minutes. Here's my second tray going in, and then I realized that I need to decorate this in a way that's different from all the other gingerbread boys because I want them to stand out that they're different. I don't want a student who's gluten intolerant to have something that has gluten. So I decided to decorate it. I'm gonna put these little, and these are dried blueberries, so they're round, so they look like buttons, or if you don't have dried blueberries, you can put raisins. I'm just gonna put those in before I bake so that they stay in there and make the little buttons on it. So that way, visually, everyone can tell right away this one is the gluten-free cookie. So here we are, they're right out of the oven this time. I did not burn them, I remembered to rotate them, and they look absolutely wonderful. Tasted them already, they taste great, just like our regular gingerbreads. You can't even tell the difference between the gluten-free and the non-gluten-free. So this is wonderful. Now don't forget, don't waste all your scraps. Put them back together, squish them back together, put them in a packet, and you can, after they sit in the refrigerator for 1 hour, you can re-roll them. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Please check out all of our videos on our YouTube channel. Take care. For more recipe demonstrations, please click like and subscribe to Chef Victoria Loves YouTube channel and have fun in the kitchen. Thank you.